The book Divided Country by Andre Odendaal explains how segregation and apartheid became entrenched in a unique way in South African cricket, that being between 1915 and the 1950s, while the rest of the cricket world increasingly rubbed out old dividing lines. South Africa reinforced them until 7 different South Africans existed at the same time in cricket. Each of them claimed the title South Africa and national, and each ran leagues and provincial competitions and chose national teams. Let's take a look, courtesy of Craig Murray. Bye-bye.
Country is Volume 2 of the History of Cricket in South Africa, a book written by Professor Andre Odendaal, Krish Reddy and Christopher Merritt. The first volume was a book called Cricket and Conquest, which covered the period from 1795 to 1914. The book documented colonialism at its worst, with Cecil John Rhodes at the helm, and how cricket in South Africa had been formed by colonialism, imperialism, racism, the superiority of the English, and then segregation through apartheid.
Today we know that the South African team bats for all cricketers in South Africa, but it was not always so. In the 1950s, there were no less than 7 South Africans. There was a white male-only South Africa called SACA. There was a essentially coloured Muslim South Africa called SACCB, which later they were forced to become the Malay Cricket Board. There was the South African Coloured Cricket Association, formed in 1926. There was the South African Indian Cricket Union, the South African Bantu Cricket Union, which in the 60s became the African Cricket Union. There was the South African Rhodesia Women's Cricket Association for white women only. And finally, there was a kind of inter-race South Africa called the South African Cricket Board of Control, SACBOC. So it was an absolute jumble with 7 different organizations in the same cities and towns, each running their own leagues, each running their own provincial competitions, each selecting their own national team. Some of them have never been known about, but now for the first time there's a coherent history. There's a statistical appendages in detail of 65 tournaments by the black and women cricketers, which we had to sweat blood to find in newspapers and old scorebooks in wardrobes and suitcases. We've reinserted people into a history where they've been erased, not by accident, but as a deliberate part of colonial and apartheid thinking and action.
The book deals with both world wars and the hardships it brought, how Indians were discriminated against, and how they only became citizens in 1961, 100 years after arriving in South Africa. They were based mainly in Durban and Johannesburg and were not allowed in the Free State. They were resilient, and their love for the game of cricket shone through against all odds. White women started playing cricket in 1952. The gentleman's game, however, was real. And while women were allowed to play hockey, golf and tennis, there was tremendous opposition to women playing cricket. African women were also involved in the game, but not in an organized forum. It was only in 2005 that women finally found a place in world cricket when the International Women's Cricket Council became part of the ICC. Divided Country also tells some amazing cricketing stories about matches and players that affected countries on a global scale.
They're also just great cricket stories. The Cape Corps people playing in Palestine, the South African Native Labour contingent in France in World War I, the first ever tour to India in 1922 by cricketers from Durban. The M.I. Yusuf scoring 410 in Bulawayo in 1936, which was the highest score ever in Southern Africa until last season, when a border batsman broke that record. The incredible story of the timeless test, which lasted 10 days and ended in a draw because the English tourists had to get on the boat back to England. Women's cricket, there was Sheila Neft, who was a brilliant leg spinner and batsman. She scored a a century and took a hat-trick in one tournament and became the first captain of a South African women's test team. The stories just carry on and on. Amazing players like Frank Gogo in Johannesburg, Ben Malamba, who was the double springbuck, as the Sackbok people called him in that time, rugby and cricket, married to a beautiful woman who was a tennis player and jazz personality, I think. And then, of course, Basil D'Oliveira, who became internationally famous, had played 16 years of first-class or representative cricket in South Africa before he went to England at the age of over 30. The Norse brothers, the Norse father and son, Dave and Dudley, played for South Africa for over a period of 51 seasons. And Dave Norse scored a double century at the age of 55. All these are sort of are stories that we work into a very kind of, hopefully, a deep history of cricket in South Africa. We live in a country where we've just given the Aussies an amazing thrashing in cricket, and you can't understand where Kagiso Rabada, Themba Bavuma, Hashim Amla, Vernon Philander, #1 bowler in the world, A.B. de Villiers, a batting genius, and them come from, if you haven't known that background.
Divided Country is a book that bowls out the existing history in South African cricket. It helps to decolonize the game and creates a past that will never be the same again. It will hopefully help change mentalities and attitudes and the ownership of cricket in South Africa today, a game to be cherished by all South Africans. Craig Murray, SABC News, Cape Town.